Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the channel. Happy Sunday, everybody. I hope your day is going very well so far. NFL Week 7 is officially here, and I have a ton of player props to go ahead and share with you guys. But first, as always, people, please make sure to go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, and drop a comment down below. Helps the channel grow, and it really does mean a ton to us. And if you guys haven't heard, I have a brand new Instagram page just simply dedicated to picks. I give out a ton of picks here on the Guy Boston Sports YouTube channel. I give up even more picks over there on the Instagram page. So go ahead and give that a follow as well. And to celebrate the new Instagram page, we're doing a little giveaway. The instructions are simple. All you have to do is go over to Instagram and follow me at Tassos Picks. After you follow me, go to my very first post and comment LFG, let's fucking go, on the first post. Do that, and come Monday, I will pick 2 lucky commenters to win free Amazon gift cards. So it's that simple, guys. Follow me on Instagram at Tassos Picks. Comment LFG in the first post, and 2 commenters will be selected to win a free $25 Amazon gift card. All right, guys, with a new week comes a new opportunity to go ahead and make some money. I have 22 player props to go ahead and share with you guys for this week's slate. We go through almost every game and pick 1 or 2 player props from each game. The only 2 games I'm not covering is the Pats-Jaguars London game, just because this video is coming out a little late on Sunday. Apologies for that. Had a little bit of a busy week, so video's coming out a little late on Sunday. So that game will be negated from the record. And also Raiders-Rams, I just don't like that game. I want to stay away from it. So those 2 games will not be included in this video. Also, the Jets-Steelers, because that's in a separate video coming out later today. So every game besides those 3 games, we have player props for. All right, guys, and real quick, before we dive into today's picks, we do have to do a quick little recap of how we did last week, our first video last week. Not the best of starts. We went 9-12 last week. A lot of close misses in there, but there's all the picks you can see on the left side of the screen or right side of the screen, whatever way you're looking at it. All the picks from last week. Again, we had a couple of close misses, some really nice hits there. Overall, 9-12. I think we can do a lot better than that, and we're going to do a lot better than that in this week's slate. So let's not waste any more time, guys. Let's dive into this week's NFL player props. Jumping right into the outlier screen, guys, wasting no time at all. Our first player prop for this week's slate comes from the Miami Dolphins Indianapolis Colts game, 1 p.m. kickoff on Sunday. This is the only prop I have from this Colts Dolphins game. We're going Jalen Waddle over 3.5 receptions. The data on this one is absolutely fantastic. You do see in all 5 games this year for the Miami Dolphins, despite Tua not playing, despite their offense kind of being dog shit the last couple of weeks without Tua, he's been able to cash this over consistently, a 100% hit rate this year, averaging 4.2 receptions per game. The insights provided by Outlier, Jalen Waddle has now exceeded 3.5 receptions in 4 of his last 5 games on the road. He's averaging 4.6 receptions per game average on the road over his last 5 road games. And this is a pretty safe bet for the most part. I mean, Jalen Waddle is second in the team in targets, obviously behind Tyreek Hill, but still a pretty decent target share, a 17.9% target share, 28 targets so far this season. And it just looks like we have a fantastic matchup here. You see receptions allowed overall, the Indianapolis Colts 24th in the NFL, and receptions allowed giving up 22.5 receptions per game to opposing teams. Versus wide receivers, 18th, not as great of a mark, but still overall solid, 12.3 receptions allowed per game to opposing wide receivers. And overall, this Colts pass defense is not that good. 26th right now in the NFL in passing yards allowed, 234.3 passing yards allowed per game. This Colts defense overall is just not that impressive. Dolphins coming off a bye. Mike McDaniel a little extra time to prep for this game. I think Tyler Huntley a little more time to get comfortable in the offense. I think the Dolphins will play a much better today. I actually picked them in the NFL Oracle. Shout out that video if you haven't seen it. It's all my regular non-player prop picks for this week's slate. I picked the Dolphins on the spread. I also like the money line in this game, to be honest. I think Miami could go ahead and pull off the upset here in Indianapolis. I like Jalen Waddle here over 3.5 receptions. Great matchup. All right, guys, next up we got Bengals-Browns, 1 p.m. kickoff on Sunday. Our first of 2 player props from this game. We're going Joe Burrow here over 1.5 touchdown passes. So far this season, Burrow has cashed this over in 4 out of 6 games, a 67% hit rate here, and he's averaging 2 touchdown passes per game. This pick for me is all about fading the Cleveland Browns. I don't like Cleveland. Their defense is still decent at times, but overall, it's not fantastic. They still have a pretty decent pass defense. They're 11th in passing yards allowed right now. Tied for 19th in scoring, gave up 23.5 points per game. But their pass rush just isn't hitting the same anymore. Overall, just kind of a mess right now, this whole Browns organization. I think the Bengals are going to roll here. They're minus 5.5. Again, another pick I gave away in the Oracle is Bengals minus 5.5. I think they roll here. I think they crush the Browns here. And in order to do that, they have to score touchdowns, obviously. And I don't think the touchdowns are coming from the ground. I think they're going to come through the air here. I think Joe Burrow over 1.5 touchdowns. Again, a 67% hit rate so far this season. I mean, it just makes sense. The Bengals have a 62% pass rate against a 38% run rate. And it's a majority of the time they are throwing it. It's more, way more than the league average there. He had 0 touchdown passes last week versus the Giants. I expect a little bit of a bounce back. They did win the game, but obviously that Giants pass rush kind of got to him. I think he'll have a little bit of a bounce back spot here versus Cleveland again. I expect the Bengals to roll. They're going to roll. It requires Joe Burrow to put in some extra work here. I like Joe Burrow over 1.5 touchdown passes. And my second prop for this game, I'm going Zach Moss over 7.5 rushing attempts for the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, admittedly, this prop is a little juiced here, minus 145 on DraftKings, also available BetMGM and Underdog for varying odds, both over minus 140. But the number's there for good reason. He's cashed an 83% hit rate this year. 5 out of 6 games he's cashed the over. He's averaging 10.5 rushing attempts per game. And the Browns right now have the 20th ranked rushing defense in the NFL in terms of yards allowed, 137 rushing yards allowed per game to opposing offenses. Like I said, this team throws a lot of the time. I think Burrow's due for a pretty good game here. Even though the Browns' pass defense is still solid, I think Joe Burrow will have a pretty decent game against the Browns, but they're going to lean into the run a little extra than normal, I think. You just have to take advantage of that matchup here. And again, this team is bottom half of the league in rushing yards allowed. And looking at rushing attempts against, 25th in the NFL, the Browns are allowing 29.5 rushing attempts against them every single week. Again, he's averaging over 10 carries a game this year. The last game versus the Giants, he only had 6, but that was more about a matchup versus that Giants defense, that front four, which is very, very dangerous. No such thing as an easy bet, but this is pretty close to it. Next up, guys, we got Titans-Bills, 1 p.m. kickoff on Sunday. Our first of 2 props from this game. I'm going Mason Rudolph, who is the Titans starting quarterback, replacing Will Levis in this game, under 30.5 passing attempts. Now, admittedly, there's not a lot of data to go off of for this prop. He's only came in once this year for the Titans, and he did not start that game. He came in relief in that game. Had just 17 passing attempts, but again, he didn't play the entire game. You got to go back to really last year, and then again, it's a totally different team with the Pittsburgh Steelers back last year. 27 passing attempts, 24. The only time he cashed it last year with the Steelers was versus the Bills, actually, at 39 passing attempts versus Buffalo back on January 15th. But again, totally different team, totally different circumstances, a totally different Bills team as well. Now, the Bills don't have a great pass defense, to be fair, but their real weakness, I should say, on their defense is their run defense. 22nd in the NFL right now in rushing yards allowed. This team struggles mightily against the run. I think the recipe is very simple for Tennessee here. Give the ball to Tony Pollard, keep the ball on the ground, limit the amount of throws on Mason Rudolph. Rudolph is a career backup quarterback. You don't really want him coming in and throwing the football 31 plus times against this Bills team. I just don't think it's wise. This team is top 10 in takeaways, 1.7 turnovers per game. A lot of those have been coming through the air. Now look, maybe Buffalo gets such a big lead that you have to throw it a ton. That's obviously possible, but I think the game script for Tennessee should be limit the amount of throws Mason Rudolph has. The Titans have a good defense. They should be able to at least slow the Bills down enough to keep this game respectable. I think the spread's really crazy. The Titans are plus 9.5, plus 10, depending on the sportsbook you get it at. Whoops, little pop-up ad there. But I just don't see them throwing the ball a ton with Mason Rudolph. At least they shouldn't. So under 30.5 passing attempts seems like a good bet to me. And for our second prop, we're going Tony Pollard over 68.5 rushing yards. Again, like I said, the weakness of this Bills defense is their run defense. Running backs have had a lot of success running on this Bills defense. Breece Hall literally was having a horrific season and ran for over 100 yards on them last week. Derrick Henry ran for almost 200 yards on them. Like I said, running backs have had a lot of success versus this Bills team. I think Tony Pollard will have a pretty big day as well. He's cashed in 3 out of 5 games this year for Tennessee, a 60% hit rate, averaging 67.8 rushing yards per game. Pollard is far and away the lead back in this offense, 58.6% run share, and Tyjae Spears is out in this game. Will Levis, who was third, is not playing, so really it's Tony Pollard, and after that it's Julius Chestnut is the next best running back available. Pollard will get a healthy amount of carries in this one. I absolutely believe that. I believe it enough. I'm throwing an audible here. We're giving actually 3 picks. Sometimes this happens. When you're recording a video, you just get that feeling. You want to go ahead and throw an extra pick in here. So we're actually throwing an extra bet. We'll add that to the bet slate. There's a little juice here. Minus 140 BetMGM, minus 145 on DraftKings. But Tony Pollard over 15.5 rushing attempts. He's actually cashed it in 4 to 5 games this year, an 80% hit rate. He's averaging just about 15, 16 carries a game. Recipe is simple, guys. Keep the ball on the ground, running against this Bills defense. I think Pollard's due for a very big day here. Give me this and the over in rushing yards for Tony Pollard. By the way, guys, before we continue on with the rest of the picks, I wanted to give a quick little shout out to our sponsor of today's video, Outlier. All of the data that you have seen so far in this video and all the data that you will see in this video is brought to you by Outlier. It is truly the best sports betting tool on the market. There's so much insight, so much information, so much helpful information to make you a better sports bettor. And the best part is we have a very special partnership with them. Using the link down below in the description, you get a 7-day free trial to use it for yourself. There's no money risk guaranteed. No money risk guaranteed. Don't really know what that means. No money risk at all using the link down below. You try it for 7 days. You don't like it, you can go ahead and cancel it. No cost to you at all. But I guarantee you guys, you're going to fall in love with Outlier. It makes you a better sports bettor, truthfully. I say it all the time. Even if I didn't have Outlier, I would still probably subscribe to the content because it's fantastic. It really does give you insight that a lot of other sports betting websites, a lot of other sports data websites can't give you. So check out the link down below in the description. 7-day free trial. Special thank you to Outlier for sponsoring today's video and being a proud sponsor of Guy Boston Sports. All right, guys, next up, we got Seahawks-Falcons, 1 p.m. kickoff on Sunday today. Our first of 2 props from this game, we're going Geno Smith here, over 25.5 passing completions. Again, data is just fantastic in this prop. He's cashed in 5 straight games, 5 out of 6 overall this year at 83% hit rate. He's averaging 28.83 passing completions per game this year. And if you thought the Bengals were crazy, the Seahawks throw it way more than they run it. A 68% pass rate for the Seahawks so far this year, way above the league average. In each of the last 5 games, he's averaging 31 passing completions per game. They're throwing the ball an absolute shit ton. He's averaging, so far this year, 41.8 passing attempts per game. If we narrow that down to just the last 5 games, which obviously we've seen 5 straight hits here, 45.2 passing attempts per game. They're throwing the ball a ton. It's actually a pretty decent matchup, too. Looking at it versus the Atlanta Falcons defense here, passing completion percentage against them, 32, worst in the league. Quarterbacks are completing passes at a 73.2% rate versus the Falcons' pass defense. And then also passing attempts against, 16th in the NFL. Quarterbacks are throwing the ball roughly around 32 times a game on this defense. Like I said, guys, we're just trusting the data here with this one. And our second prop from this game, we're going Kenneth Walker here, over 68.5 rushing yards. Now, like I just said, obviously, they throw the ball way more than they run it. Taking a running back prop might seem a little risky. But to be fair, part of the reason why that pass rate's so high is that Kenneth Walker has missed some time this year. Walker has played in 4 out of 6 games for Seattle so far this year. You look at the first 2 weeks of the year when he was healthy, 103 yards versus Denver in the season opener, 80 yards the next time he played versus Detroit. And then since then, some bad matchups while also being a little dinged up. 19 yards versus the Giants, 32 yards versus the Niners. Both of those guys have pretty decent run defense. He's averaging 58.5 rushing yards per game this year. This just feels like a nice bounce back spot for Kenneth Walker. Looking at Atlanta so far this year, they are right now 24th in the NFL in run defense. They're giving up 142 rushing yards per game to opposing defenses. So it's a really good bounce back spot here for Kenneth Walker versus running backs in particular, 17th. Give him 99 rushing yards per game to opposing running backs. Even with missing time, though, Kenneth Walker is still the lead back here. 40.8% run share, 51 carries. And again, those numbers are not great to look off of completely because of the fact that Zach Charbonnet got a lot of these carries when Kenneth Walker wasn't even playing. He missed 2 weeks this year, so obviously that has to be taken into account. Kenneth Walker is far and away the lead back. He's going to get the majority of the carries in this matchup. And it's a pretty solid matchup. Again, pretty weak run defense, bottom 10 in the NFL. Solid spot here for Kenneth Walker. All right, guys, next game, we got Texans-Packers, 1 p.m. kickoff on Sunday. We're going Joe Mixon here, over 18.5 receiving yards in this one. Mixon has cashed this in 3 out of 3 games so far this year, averaging 24.67 receiving yards per game. It's a really solid matchup as well. Overall, the Green Bay Packers, 25th in the NFL in receiving yards allowed per game, giving up 248.5 receiving yards per game to opposing teams. However, taking a little deeper dive here versus running backs in particular, you'll see they are 29th in the NFL. They're giving up almost 45 receiving yards per game to opposing running backs. So it's really solid matchup here. And although you look at the target share, you see just a 5.2% target share for Mixon. A couple things to take into account. Number one, he's missed 3 games so far this year for the Texans, so that will obviously affect the overall numbers. And also, Nico Collins is out, who is number 2 in target share. So you have one of the top guys in targets out. And again, Joe Mixon, he's only played in 3 games, 11 targets in those 3 games. Considering the matchup as well, I expect Joe Mixon to go ahead and cash this over again in this one. And sticking with another running back prop, we're going Josh Jacobs here of the Packers, over 15.5 rushing attempts. In this one, he's cashed at a 67% hit rate so far this year. 4 out of 6 games, he's cashed the over. He's averaging 18 run attempts per game this year. Again, two good run defenses. Two good run defenses. You saw he struggled with the rushing attempts there. But that was all about matchup, guys. He's cashed this again for the majority of this season. Even the last 2 weeks, he's cashed the over there. The Texans have a solid defense, but their weakness right now is in their run defense. 14th in the NFL in rushing yards allowed. They're giving up almost 119 rushing yards per game to opposing teams. And despite Jordan Love's success this year, this team is a run team the majority of the time. 51% run rate, well above the league average in terms of pass versus run rate. And Josh Jacobs, overwhelming majority of the carries, 108 rushing attempts so far this year, a 54.5% run share. I expect the Packers to lean in the ground game a little bit in this one, so over 15.5 rushing attempts seems like a solid bet to me. All right, guys, next up, Lions-Vikings, 1 p.m. kickoff on Sunday. We're going Sam Darnold here, over half an interception. Like I said, guys, good data is the name of the game here. Sam Darnold's actually cashed this over in 4 out of 5 games here. The only game he didn't throw an interception against the Texans. Really solid matchup. The Detroit Lions are the 3rd best team in the NFL right now in terms of interceptions forced per game. They're forcing about 1.4 interceptions per game this season, which is pretty impressive overall. And they have a top 5 pass defense in general, so really solid matchup here. And then I'm also taking Jameson Williams over 49.5 receiving yards in this game. He's cashed it in 4 out of 5 games so far this year, an 80% hit rate, averaging 73 receiving yards per game. I also made a mistake on that last prop, guys. They actually don't have the 5th best pass defense. They're 27th pass defense right now in the NFL. So apologies for that. A little bit of a misread there on the data. But again, they are still forcing 1.4 interceptions per game. So pretty solid. And they're 4th overall in takeaways, forcing 2 turnovers per game in general. So that's just a look at that number. Apologies for that. But looking at the Vikings defense, their pass defense also horrific. 30th in the NFL right now in passing yards allowed, giving up 263 passing yards per game. They're there, 30th in passing yards. Receiving yards allowed, 289 versus the wide receivers. The 2nd most receiving yards allowed per game to opposing wide receivers, 209.2. This is the nature of their defense. They blitz heavy, but that obviously opens you up for some big plays there. Wide receivers had some pretty good success going up against Minnesota this year. Jameson Williams is a big play receiver. He's 2nd on this team in target share, 19.5%. And again, he's their big shot receiver, the guy they throw to downfield quite a bit. He's averaging 5.8 targets per game. You see his targets have gone down a little bit the last couple of games. However, a couple of blowouts in those ones. But that should tell you all that you need to know. Only a couple of targets in those games, and yet he's still 80 yards, 76 yards. He only had 2 catches versus Seattle, and only 3 catches versus Dallas, and yet he cashed this over both those times. He's a big play receiver, big shot receiver, averaging 22.9 yards per reception. So pretty solid numbers there for Jameson Williams. 50 yards, very doable for him in this matchup. All right, guys, next up, Giants-Eagles, 1 p.m. kickoff on Sunday today. Our first of 2 props from this game. We're going Daniel Jones here, over 33.5 passing attempts. Again, guys, pretty strong data on this one. 83% hit rate so far this year for Daniel Jones. He's averaging 36.5 passing attempts per game this season. The only game he failed to cash this over was week 2 versus Washington, only 28 passing attempts in that game. They're throwing the ball a lot, and it's a pretty good matchup here in terms of throwing the football. You see the Eagles, their strength right now on defense, they're not, I wouldn't say strength, but they're better against the run than they are against the pass. 16th in the NFL in rushing yards allowed, but their pass defense, 21st. This Eagles pass defense, not particularly great. They got some injuries now, too. Darius Slay obviously out, some inexperience with a couple rookie corners there. I know Devin Singletary, he is back, which obviously might take some of the pass attempts away from Daniel Jones. But again, this Eagles secondary is worth picking on. I think Daniel Jones over 33.5 passing attempts, pretty safe bet here. And if he's throwing the football a lot in this game, it's pretty safe to assume that this guy is going to have a big day. Malik Neighbors, his first game back from a concussion. We're going with this over here, 73.5 receiving yards. He was on a tear prior to the concussion that he received towards the end of that Cowboys game. 3 straight games he's cashed the over. He's averaging 96.5 receiving yards per game this year. The only game he failed to catch was his NFL debut week 1 versus Minnesota. He had just 66 yards receiving in that one. But he's been amazing. The important thing here is the target share. Look at the receptions, the target share, 34% target share over those 4 games he's played in, which is pretty impressive. Averaging 13 targets per game over those 4 games. And again, only 7 targets in week 1. He had 18 week 2 versus Washington, 15 versus Dallas, 12 versus Cleveland. He's definitely become quickly Daniel Jones' favorite target. And with him being back in this one, obviously, big rivalry game. If Daniel Jones is throwing the ball a ton, I expect that Malik Neighbors will get the majority of those targets. Over 73.5 receiving yards seems like a good spot here. Oh, and by the way, the Eagles right now, 24th in receiving yards allowed to opposing wide receivers, 162.2 yards per game given up to the wide receiver position. So really solid matchup here for Malik Neighbors. Real quick, guys, before moving to the 4 o'clock window, a quick word from our friends over at FanDuel. That's right, guys. Guy Boston Sports and FanDuel Sportsbooks are partnering here to give you this very special offer. Use the link down below as a new customer. Bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. It's that simple, guys. Bet $5, get $300 in bonus bets if you win as a new customer. We're talking free money here if you can go ahead and hit a bet. And to celebrate this partnership, I'm actually going to go do a little giveaway here. One of my favorite picks in this slate is this Malik Neighbors prop we just talked about, over 73.5 receiving yards. And conveniently enough, it's available the best odds on FanDuel, minus 110 on this one. All you gotta do is comment Malik Neighbors down below in the comments, and if he hits this prop, I'll give one lucky commenter a free $15 Amazon gift card. It's easy, it's simple, and really good odds provided by FanDuel. So if you are a new FanDuel customer, you got a little double bonus for this one. If this bet hits and you comment down below, again, you could be selected to win a free $15 Amazon gift card. But again, if you bet $5 as a new customer on this Malik Neighbors prop and it hits, you get $300 in bonus bets as well as the winning. So just giving you a little extra incentive to go ahead and utilize this link down below. Really great offer from FanDuel. They are a fantastic partner of Guy Boston Sports. Thank you to FanDuel Sportsbook for partnering with us for today's video. Again, that link will be down below in the description. Next up, guys, we got Panthers Commanders, 4:05 p.m. kickoff today. We got Austin Eckler over 16.5 receiving yards. He's cashed it in all 5 games this year, averaging 39.6 receiving yards per game this season. I don't think I have to tell you guys, this Panthers defense is horrific. 23rd right now in the NFL in passing yards allowed, 30th in rushing yards, but specifically in receiving yards versus running backs. We go and look up above here. Again, 20th in receiving yards allowed versus running backs, 19th, giving up 31.5 receiving yards per game to the running back position. Eckler is averaging 3.2 targets per game. He actually had 5 targets last week versus Baltimore. He's not high on the target totem pole here in Washington, but he doesn't really need to be. He only needs a couple targets a game, and he can go ahead and catch. He's averaging 13.3 yards per reception. Again, he only needs 1 or 2 catches, and he's getting enough targets to go ahead and do that. He has a 94% catch rate right now over the 5 games this season. So not a lot of, again, you're throwing to a running back, so most times he's not really in really difficult spots to catch a ball, but 2, 3, 4, 5 targets. He's getting a minimum of 2 targets per game in every game this year. Again, when you're averaging almost 13.3 yards per reception, the line is 16.5. We don't need him to get a ton of volume here in the receiving game to cash the over. I do like the spot here for Eckler. And piggybacking off of that, we're going with Chuba Hubbard here, over 94.5 rushing plus receiving yards, and this is a DraftKings exclusive at minus 115. He's cashed it now in 4 consecutive games for the Carolina Panthers. And the key thing to know here is that they're getting blown out in a lot of these games. So one of the key things that people would be afraid of for this prop is betting a running back when your team is down by a lot of points. Not a very good recipe for success, but they've been getting blown out in some of these games, and he's still cashing the over. You see, lost by 18 to the Falcons, lost by 26 to the Bears, lost by 10 to the Bengals. And some of these games were close at points. But Chuba Hubbard's had a lot of success here over the last few weeks. He's kind of the only thing going for this Carolina offense. And it's a pretty good matchup. You look at the Washington defense, they are 28th in rushing yards allowed to running backs, give 120 rushing yards per game to opposing running backs. Receiving yards allowed, also 12th in the NFL, giving up 27 receiving yards per game. Now, obviously, Jonathan Brooks is coming back. There's a reason why Miles Sanders has been included in a lot of trade rumors and whatnot, but Jonathan Brooks is a rookie coming off an injury. I don't think Chuba Hubbard is going to lose a lot of his rushing attempts, and I'd be shocked. Right now, a 61% running share. Again, I expect Jonathan Brooks to come in and take a lot of, at least some of those away from him, but again, he's going to be the majority of the time the running back. He's the one thing they got going for him. This offensive line is pretty solid in terms of run blocking. This Commanders defense not very good against the run, so I think Chuba Hubbard will have a pretty big game here. All right, guys, next up, we got Chiefs-Niners. 3 props coming at you in this game. Our first of 3, we're on Patrick Mahomes, over half an interception. He's cashed in all 5 games so far this year, 100% hit rate, averaging 1.2 interceptions per game this year. Look, no one's arguing that Mahomes isn't the best quarterback in the NFL, but over the last couple seasons, you've seen him throw quite a few interceptions. This hit at a 60% hit rate last year, 12 out of 20 games, including playoffs. He did throw an interception. Again, so far this year, 100% hit rate. And again, this one's all about the matchup. The 49ers are top 10 in the NFL right now, forcing 1 interception per game every game this year, 7th best mark in the NFL. That's the average, of course. So pretty good team in terms of forcing takeaways right now overall. Look at the Niners defense, tied for 6th in turnovers forced. They're forcing 1.8 turnovers per game. Again, forcing 1 interception per game on average. So for a guy who's already been cashing this pretty consistently against a defense that's forcing it pretty consistently, I think 1 interception here for Mahomes, not too crazy to expect. Next up, we're going Deebo Samuel, over 71.5 rushing plus receiving yards. He's cashed it in 4 out of 5 games so far this year, averaging 77.2 rushing plus receiving yards per game. He's done it against good defenses. He's done it against bad defenses. Deebo Samuel right now is the top weapon in this Niners offense. Ayuk's not having the best of years, so Deebo has been the go-to, and normally I think he's probably the go-to anyways, but especially so far this year. Now, he has missed one game due to injury, so that's why his target share may not be as good as some of the others here. Still a 17.8% target share. That, again, you got to take into effect that he has missed a game. Look at the rushing attempts, too. Pretty solid. 10% rush share, 19 rush attempts per game. The key thing for Deebo is that he doesn't need a lot of volume to get where he needs to get for the numbers. Look at his average yards per reception right now is at 17.8 yards per reception. 30.8 yards after the catch. A lot of this came last week. He had 73 yards after the catch against Seattle last week. Big touchdown last week for Deebo. He gets most of his work done through the air, but he does add enough rushing yards that it's worth taking the rushing plus receiving yards prop. Again, he's averaging 77.2 rushing plus receiving yards per game this year. And although the Chiefs' defense is pretty solid, I just think Deebo Samuel is such a Swiss Army knife as a weapon that it could be tough for the Chiefs' defense to go ahead and prep for. Give me the over here on Deebo Samuel's rushing plus receiving yards. And my third prop from this game, another one has been cashing all year long. George Kittle, anytime touchdown, plus 185 on FanDuel there. Again, use the link down below. Bet $5. This one hits, you get the plus 185 hit, plus $300 in bonus bets. He's cashed it in 4 straight games this year, averaging 1 touchdown reception per game this season. And look at the matchup. The Kansas City Chiefs, 26th in the NFL right now in touchdowns allowed to the tight end position, giving up 0.4 touchdowns per game to opposing tight ends. Not a greatly big number there, but they are still bottom 6 in the NFL right now in touchdowns giving up to the tight end position. All right, guys, so that does it for the Sunday games. We're now looking at tomorrow's two games. We have 4 picks left in this week's slate. Our first pick from Ravens Bucks, we're going Lamar Jackson over 287.5 rushing plus passing yards, Lamar's cashed the over in 4 out of 6 games this year, a 67% hit rate, averaging 322 total yards per game this year. Matchup is key here, guys, and this Bucks defense is not particularly great. Looking overall here, the Bucks defense, they are right now 29th in the NFL in passing yards allowed, giving up 252 yards per game. They're also tied for 12th. They're a little bit of a better run defense, actually a much better run defense than they are a pass defense. But even still, they're giving up 113 rushing yards per game to opposing teams. I think this game, guys, is going to be an absolute shootout, and I think Lamar Jackson will have to do a lot through the air in this game. But again, this Bucs defense makes it pretty easy for a quarterback to go ahead and throw, even a quarterback like Lamar Jackson, who does get a lot of his success on the ground. He's been crushing it through the air, though. 323 passing yards last week, 348 passing yards the week before. He's been cashing this just in passing yards alone in a lot of these games, specifically the last 2 weeks. So yeah, the rushing yards are a factor here, but that's just a little extra bonus. Really, just in passing yards, he's been throwing the ball a shit ton the last couple games. I really expect no difference here. This is a really weak Bucs secondary. I expect Baltimore to go ahead and take advantage of the matchup. Kind of the same story on the Bucs side as well. Baker Mayfield over 1.5 touchdown passes. We actually bet this last week, and we hit it here. He's cashed it in 4 out of 6 games so far this year. He had 4 touchdown passes last week versus the Saints. Only versus Denver versus Detroit, 2 solid defenses that he failed to get multiple touchdown passes. And again, pretty much the same situation as we just talked about. The Ravens' pass defense is actually even worse than Tampa Bay's. 275 passing yards allowed per game this season. Really bad marks, 31st in the NFL, second worst in the league. And looking at passing touchdowns against the Ravens, 27th in the NFL. They're giving up 1.8 touchdown passes per game to opposing quarterbacks. We're getting that from minus 108.2 on FanDuel. Really solid value for a prop. He's been cashing at a 67% hit rate against a defense that gives up a ton of touchdowns to opposing quarterbacks. And finishing up here, guys, we got Cardinals, Chargers, the last Monday night game. Our first of 2 props, we're going Kyler Murray here under 256.5 passing plus rushing yards. From a data standpoint, he's cashed the under in 4 out of 6 games so far this year, a 67% hit rate on this under. He's averaging 241.17 total yards per game. He's had a couple close misses. He 252, just barely missed it versus Detroit. His only hits were versus San Francisco and versus LA. Just a really bad matchup here. The Chargers defense has been a revelation under Jim Harbaugh. They're top 10 in both passing yards allowed and rushing yards allowed so far this year. Just 192 passing yards allowed this year. There's 97.2 rushing yards allowed per game this year. And unfortunately for Arizona, this team forces a lot of turnovers as well. Tied for 6th and turnovers forced, 1.8 turnovers per game. You watched that Cardinals-Packers game last week. A lot of fumbles. Cardinals had a hard time holding onto the football on that one. Just a bad matchup here for Kyler. I'm just not expecting a big game from him. And our final prop in this week's slate, guys, we made it to the end of the video. We got J.K. Dobbins over half a touchdown. Anytime touchdown score, it's minus 120 on Underdog, minus 125 on DraftKings, minus 140 on FanDuel. And again, that is just too good to pass up. Here's cash this touchdown prop in 3 out of 5 games so far this year. The Cardinals' weakness on defense is actually not their rushing defense. Whoops, sorry, that's, again, on the offensive page, excuse me. It was. I in my pregame notes they had one of the worst run defenses in the NFL. This makes a little bit more sense. 29th in the NFL in rushing yards allowed, 153 rushing yards allowed per game this season. So really bad marks. This Cardinals run defense is atrocious. You see here overall touchdowns against. They're giving up 3.2 touchdowns per game, but versus running backs, 20. They give about a touchdown per game to opposing running backs. And if any running back on the Chargers is going to score a touchdown, it's going to be J.K. Dobbins here. So you understand why it's minus 125, minus 140 on FanDuel. The matchup is just really, really solid. So, guys, that does it for me today. Thank you very much, as always, for watching. One more time, guys, please make sure to go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, and drop a comment down below. We will be back next week with another NFL player prop video. It will definitely be out earlier than it was this week. I apologize for coming out later on a Sunday. But until next time, guys, hope you're all winners. Enjoy Week 7 of NFL football.